Good afternoon, History of Psychology. For this week's You Be the Expert video, I will be taking the life and accomplishments of Rene Descartes, one of the most famous figures of the Enlightenment, and distilling them down to about 5 minutes. Have your doubts? So did he. That's how we got here. So Rene Descartes was born in 1596 to a wealthy family. As a child, he had access to an extremely well-rounded education. He studied everything from literature to science to theology to classical thought to philosophy. As he is alleged to have said, if it could have been learned from a book, he had learned it. After leaving school, unfortunately, though, he had an intellectual crisis. He looked about and saw that supposedly brilliant minds were still grappling with the same problems and questions and still debating the same points that had been argued about for the last 1,000 years, and they were still no closer to a resolution. As he put it, he felt that he had gained nothing from his education but a full realization of just how ignorant he was. Shortly after this point, he decided to take up soldiering. He was hoping that real-world experience might prove more enlightening, more satisfying than academia had. Spoiler alert, he got bored with it rather quickly. But it was shortly after this period that he made the first of his many contributions to science. This would be the creation of what he termed analytic geometry. Now, as the story goes, as you've likely read, he was disturbed by a fly buzzing around in his room. Perhaps it woke him up from a nap or something. And in a flash of insight, realized that he could precisely define its position using only 3 numbers. Now, these would eventually become what we all know and love as the X, Y, and Z axes of the aptly named Cartesian coordinate system. This was also the first of his many legacies to later generations. Both Gottfried Leibniz and Isaac Newton, in their respective pursuit of their own forms of calculus, would make heavy use of the system that he had devised. The system he devised was also revolutionary because it did something rather special. It built a bridge between geometry, mathematics, and the physical world. Essentially, it was creating a link between the abstract and the tangible. This would become a recurring theme for Descartes through the rest of his career. The bridge also serves as a metaphor for a concept that has already come up in class, the idea of dualism. The mind and the body are separate substances. They coexist, but one is abstract and the other is tangible. Now, I'm not going to do his thought process justice at all, so don't be expecting miracles here. But Descartes essentially reasoned that he could imagine his body existing, he could imagine his body not existing. He could imagine everything in creation except for him not existing. But he could not imagine his own non-existence. He could not imagine not thinking. However, he did reason that if he was pondering his own existence, then that was probably a fairly good indicator that he was at least around to do some pondering. This, of course, would bring us to one of the top 5 quotes in all of recorded history. Mojito, ergo rum. No. Cogito, ergo sum. I think. Therefore, I am. Now, this is about as introspective as you can possibly get. It was the simplest truth that he could be absolutely, completely certain of. And this was the simple truth that would then lead the way to everything else. Again, he was going back to his studies in geometry and the concept of the axiom. You take something that's very simple, that is beyond reproach, and then you build upon that. Now, others going all the way back to Pythagoras had come up with the idea that mind and body were separate entities. But a lot of the time, it was more of an implicit understood. Descartes did something special with this as well, because beyond just stating the idea explicitly, he actually went a step further and tried to solve the riddle of how they interacted, what the actual mechanism was involved. He actually settled on the pineal gland in the brain as being, as he put it, the principal seat of the soul. Fun fact, the pineal gland is responsible for producing melatonin, which regulates our sleep cycles. And as you've likely read the text already, we know how much Descartes loved to nap. Purely coincidental, I'm sure. But discovering the mechanisms behind behavior was a passion for him. He devoted a lot of time to the study of reflexes, and those theories haven't aged well. But he did provide a valuable gift to later generations, in that he legitimized the idea that one could learn about animals by studying other forms of life. And this, of course, goes all the way up to stimulus response theory with Watson, Little Albert, and all the rest. You remember those from intro, I'm sure. For his other contributions to later on, Freud would, if not borrow, at least tip his hat to Descartes' ideas of rationality and irrationality as well. And of course, with introspection, that goes all the way back to Plato, carries through Descartes, and goes all the way up to Wilhelm Wundt and the dawn of modern psychology. Reactions to his theories, whether they were positive or negative, whether people agreed with them or disagreed with them, they were still talking about him, and he was still a focus of discussion. He made an impact in his time, and I would argue that he had steered the conversation up until this very moment. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you want your point for the week, it's located somewhere down in the comments below. And I appreciate you watching me put Descartes before the horse. Bye for now.